I liken it to the McDonald's example, right? So McDonald's is a real estate company that makes cheeseburgers, and 20% of their revenues come from franchisees and sales and burgers. The other 80% is real estate, right? They've got $40 billion of real estate assets. I look at my property management business really as the cheeseburgers. I don't have one without the other, and they kind of go hand in hand. So if I run a property management company for 20 years and I don't actively invest or buy single family or multifamily, I'm missing out on 80% of the potential wealth creation and profit.
I don't throw darts at a board. I bet on sure things. Read Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Every battle is won before it's ever fought. Think about it.
Welcome to another episode of the Profitable Property Management Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Muela, and I am here with Ralph Reahard. Ralph, thanks for coming on the show.
Jordan, thanks for having me. First time, long time. First time to be on the show, but I've been listening for years, so thanks for all the great content, what you do for the property management tribe.
I appreciate that, man. So for those that don't know, give us some context on the business as it stands today. What market, unit count, staff size?
Sure. I'm based out of Richmond, Virginia. I own a real property management franchise there. We just opened our second location in Stanton, Virginia, about 90 miles away. So between the two, we have just over 1,200 units under management. Staff of 27. We do a lot of in-house maintenance, but got in the business in 2014.
Great. And how did you get into the business?
Just dumb luck. Woke up one day. I already had 2 rental properties. Was looking for a property management company. Didn't see anything that I liked in my market. And like a lot of foolish entrepreneurs, I thought I can do this myself.
How hard can it be?
Right. I grabbed the safety net of a franchise agreement back then and thought that would give me a better chance for success. And it really has. It's been a great partnership.
How do you like the Richmond market in particular? What do you think is unique or distinct about that market?
Richmond is a great town. I mean, it's got a lot of tailwinds. We've got some Fortune 500 companies there, Capital One, CarMax. We're a state capital. That helps. We've got a lot of government jobs. Virginia Commonwealth University is huge. They've got 40,000 undergrad in downtown. And my alma mater is there, the University of Richmond. Go Spiders.
I see the connection here. You represent today.
That's right. I am. We made the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2011. So I wasn't even in real estate back then. It's been so long. So we were excited. We won the first round and got smoked in the second round. But
that's no small feat.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that we connected is you reached out and you communicated that based on a previous episode that you had listened to, you had taken some steps to empower and enable to create some opportunity for your staff as it relates to real estate investment. Tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was actually, oddly enough, I was down at PM Grow in Austin. On the flight down, I listened to Profitable Property Management. And I forgot who you'd interviewed, but somebody else.
Mike Schrafer.
Mike Schrafer, that's right. And he mentioned he was investing with his team members and kind of showing them the ropes and would do a lot of the work and do it as an educational seminar where they would buy a property over the 8-week course. And I thought, man, what a great idea. I was already an investor in buying stuff myself. And I thought, how can I get my team excited about this? If I run a property management company for 20 years and buy 100 doors or 200 doors, that's great for me and my family, but what have I done to add value to my staff? So I was passionate about helping them. We call it the RPM AF. So that stands for Acquisition Fund. And we just do joint ventures. So each employee sets up their LLC. They get 30% sweat equity. I bring the capital and the expertise. I sign on the note. So it's non-recourse to them, but it's a way for them to dip their toe in. And it's created a lot of excitement. And it's also helped with staff turnover, right? So you've got to be with us for 2 years. And at your 2-year anniversary, we'll get together. We'll go over an operating agreement, set up an LLC, and go out and find a rental property.
What does adoption and uptake look like?
Adoption's been 100%, right? So it's not...
You're saying 100% of staff members?
Yes, it's not optional. So once you hit 2 years with us, we're going to go do it. And you're not really investing any money. You're just investing your time to help find the property.
Bird dog, find the deal.
Yep, find the deal. talked to different insurance brokers, debt providers. I really selfishly, I love single family rentals. I'm passionate about it. I love investing, but I started doing bigger and bigger deals, and I didn't have time to go chase down a $150,000 Burr property. But my teammates really did, and we're excited about it. So it was a way for me to stay involved and get 70% of a house, that a deal I never would have done, and they're getting some equity. So it's really been a win-win, and we had a lot of legal expertise to structure it the right way, but it's been great. So.
What's the buy box for these types of properties for this scenario?
Yeah, so we're typically looking at a Burr property. So we fish in our own pond. We look through our client base. If there's somebody looking to sell, would they entertain an off-market offer? But anything we can get 70 to 80% below market, and then we'll do a $20,000 renovation. I'll fund that with cash. We'll refinance the property. And a lot of times, you might get stuck. I'll leave $5,000-$6,000 in there. If we didn't hit our numbers right, the appraisal came in low, or maybe the rehab went over. So in that case, my $6,000 gets paid back out of cash flow first, and then that next dollar we split 70-30.
So this is one format of investment. You did this on the heels of the investments that you've already done. One of the reasons that I wanted to have you on was to talk about your personal investing. I'm intensely interested in the wealth creation comparison that can be made between an operating going concern like a property management business versus the passive investment, active to some degree,
right, on
the real estate side. Talking with folks that are working so hard, optimizing, improving, growing their business, which is the nature of the entrepreneurial endeavor, it's a bit of a head trip to know that there's a huge amount of wealth that can be created in real estate, but the dynamic is so different because it is not this endless outlet for improvement and optimization, and yet you're getting a big yield. It breaks the mental paradigm that may not be stated but is intuited, which is that effort is the byproduct of effort is the source of all good things. And there's truth in that. I believe in hustle, but there's some wiring of maybe a misguided message in entrepreneurship, which is like every good thing is just going to come through raw, unadulterated hustle. And in some ways, real estate kind of breaks that paradigm. Talk to me about what personally pulled you into real estate and what the wealth creation contribution of that has looked like as juxtaposed against your successful property management company.
Right. That's a great point, Jordan, and a good question. I think, I liken it to the McDonald's example, right? So McDonald's is a real estate company that makes cheeseburgers, and 20% of their revenues come from franchisees and sales and burgers. The other 80% is real estate, right? They've got $40 billion of real estate assets. I look at my property management business really as the cheeseburgers. I don't have one without the other, and they kind of go hand in hand. So if I run a property management company for 20 years and I don't actively invest or buy single family or multifamily, I'm missing out on 80% of the potential wealth creation and profit. So
brother, I just want to park it right there. I'm not going to say that's controversial, but that's not a trivial point. And you're saying that not as an esoteric theory, like you're in it. You have a very successful property management company at scale, and you're saying, like in the big picture,
right,
that's not the nut. That's the side dish.
Right.
The steak's over here. This is the potatoes. This is some parsley.
Correct. Yeah. I hadn't looked at it that way. It's more than parsley, but it's a cliche, but I stand on the shoulders of giants. If I didn't have great property managers and team members in place, I couldn't go out and do all this fun stuff. So, but it is, the equity guys and gals are the ones that are making most of the money on these deals. And
how did you come to that conclusion?
I had a client and we watched him. He had 20 apartments in downtown Richmond. They were class C minus, just really gross. 50% occupied. We were getting low fees. We spent 18 months with this guy as he rehabbed them, got them all built up. And finally, I'm like, great, we're going to finally get some management fees here. I was smart. I locked him into a 3-year agreement. And as soon as we hit stabilization, he sold it and made $1 million profit. And I said, man, that stings, right? I worked so hard and had terrible fees and lost money the whole way. And this guy walked with $1 million. And I said, I can probably figure this out. And that's when I started really creating strategic partnerships and, working with investors.
So slowly but surely, you're building it up to what? What does the portfolio look like now?
Sure. So I was interviewed by a local business blog when I opened the business in 2014. And I, as an entrepreneur, so I want to buy 5 houses a year. I thought that was an awesome goal. Fast forward 7 years now, we're up to over 350 units. That's a mix. It's about 70 single family homes. The rest are apartment units. And my average ownership is about 28%. So I made the decision I wanted to have a smaller portion of a big business rather than a bigger portion of a small business. So, and it wasn't really intentional. I kind of got started with my business partner, Ali Samir, who came from a debt underwriting background. So he was working with commercial lenders. He was on the other side of the fence looking at the equity guys making all the money. I was on the property management side watching the equity guys make the money. And we just connected. So he was in town looking at a 18-unit deal. It was about $2.8 million in downtown Richmond. He's younger than me. And I was like, how is this guy going to buy this, big property? It was like a big boy project. And so we consulted on what rents would be. And I said, I just pulled him aside after. I said, can we get coffee? I want to find out, I know the down payment's going to be around $900,000. I was like, how are you guys raising money? How are you doing this? And they had a lot of guts. He said, listen, we've got about $150,000 of cash, but we're going to go out and raise the rest. And they've got this big property under contract. And, that'll phrase jump in the net will appear. They were doing that. And I said, man, how can I help these guys out? And I said, well, I would love to come in. If you'll let me, I'll put in $50,000. And I started thinking about it. A lot of my clients have told me, if you see a deal, let me know. They had small multifamily. And then I went to Ali. I said, hey, I've got 2 other people that want to come in for $300,000. So all of a sudden, I went from being a property manager to an equity provider. And they now had 450 of the 900,000 they needed. It made the rest of the raise a lot easier, right? Hey, my property manager likes this deal so much, he's coming in. And the rest of it got raised within a couple weeks. So it was really, I just wanted a seat at the table to learn, and I committed some capital and added value. And you better believe when they went and bought another property, I tagged along as well and got on the general partner side of that one. But again, it's boosting the management company. We're adding doors. We're getting some nice fees along the way and gaining equity. So really a triple win. So, I'm a golfer through and through. That's my background. I was actually a golf professional before I got into real estate. And it reminds me of a story. Lee Trevino said that pressure is a $10 bet when you only have $2 in your pocket. And that's what this guy, Ali and Kevin did was they had $150,000. There's no way they're going to be able to buy this $3 million building. But they jumped in, and I was lucky enough to help them do that. So had a lot of respect for them for taking that leap. And then we've kind of done that and repeated that process.
Love that story. Love the metaphor. Back to the previous metaphor of the McDonald's paradigm. I want to suss out what you're getting at here because it can sound like at first that PM, not important, the REI, very important. What is the symbiotic relationship between these things? What advantage are you at that somebody else, like say somebody like me, I don't own a management company. What advantage are you at relative to your ability to facilitate and scale the game that you're playing?
Right. It is hand in glove, right? And I'm not belittling any of the property management work we do. That's very important. You can't be a successful syndicator unless you've got operations to back it up. And also that kind of insider knowledge of market rents, expenses. With that property I referenced earlier, we already had 5 similar ones that we were managing. So we knew what the expenses were. We could help them with their model. And actually a lot of investors aren't capable of closing on these properties because lenders want to see your background, your bio, your track record to be sure that you know what you're doing.
You're not a hobbyist.
Right, exactly. So every commercial broker in town probably has a story of, hey, I had this buyer under contract, but it fell through because they didn't have the expertise. As a property manager, you put your bio in with the syndicator or the general partner who's got the equity, it's more compelling to the lender. They feel like their money is safe. We're able to get better terms. So that's really the advantage. And you can't have one without the other. McDonald's doesn't have the real estate unless they've got the product to sell.
What is the advantage to being minority versus majority? You mentioned an average of 28% ownership. I'm sure in some cases you're above and below the 50% threshold. What are the advantages on either side?
So with a typical syndication, you've got a general partner who's sponsoring the deal. They're usually going to sign on the note. So if the deal goes south, they're responsible for that debt to the bank. Limited partners aren't. Their investment is non-recourse. So if you put in $50,000, that's all you're risking. So those are kind of the main differences. As the syndicator or the general partner, there's some other fees that come in. Through your operating agreement, you may spell out an acquisition fee, 1 to 3% of the purchase price. You may get a waterfall. That's where your incentives are aligned if you perform. So you may say, Mr. Investor, we're projecting an 8% cash on cash return. We're going to guarantee you that. It's a preferred return, for the first 5 years of the hold. Well, if in year 2, the property is spinning off 10% cash, that last 2% gets split up, right? So the general partner may get 30% of that. The limited partner gets 70%. So your incentives are aligned, and that's where operations are so huge and why property managers are really poised to do well if you can learn the skill set.
What advice or feedback do you have on entity structure? Where do all these investments sit for you?
That's a great question. And as each deal we do gets bigger and bigger, the legal fees jump up. The last one, I might choke a little bit when I say this, but it was about $76,000 in legal fees.
Just to get the deal done.
To get the deal done. It was a tax credit project with, different structures and partnerships and 6 different documents. And of course, there were 4 different attorneys involved, and that stuff adds up. So each one is different, and I enjoy that too. That's kind of the fun of learning. One of these deals typically takes 90 days to put together, and it's just like putting together a puzzle or doing a group project in college, which I know everybody hated, but you've got to bring in the equity guys. You've got to talk to lenders. You've got to have the right insurance. So how do I get all these pieces to work to provide the return that we want? And if they don't, then it's time to back out of the deal or renegotiate before the end of due diligence.
So any more feedback on like the specific entity structure or the vehicle?
Sure. So most of the time it'll be an LLC with you'll have what's called a Schedule A on the back end, and it outlines who's putting in what capital and what their role is going to be. So as the syndicator or general partner in that operating agreement, you're typically going to be the manager, right? You've got control. The limited partner is going to be a member. So they've got to kind of do what the manager says, right? I'm the expert in property management. Ali's the expert in debt sourcing and underwriting. So we make the call as to when to refinance the property, when to sell it. So again, as a limited partner, you're giving up control, but you're trading it for expertise and really a hands-off experience.
How do you think about investing in your market versus others? Previous answer, great advantage to have the PM function. It has to be had somewhere. Have you invested exclusively in the Richmond market? Have you made any investments elsewhere? And how have you handled third-party management that you couldn't facilitate yourself?
That's a great question. And starting out, I was like, man, I just want to build accounts, right? I need more doors under management, right? More doors is more money. So, and then I realized, well, I can probably get a better return if I look at another market. And so now I've got property in Maryland. I work with a different property manager there. Indiana, we're big in Macon, Georgia. But I want to know that operator. I'm not going to just pick a market and go there because I like it. I want to find the right person to partner with and the right property manager. And make sure that you take care of them. And I want to be their best client. So we've got 40 units down in Macon, Georgia right now. That story I talked about, renovating a 20-unit property and getting no fees, watching the owner take $1 million paycheck home. We're doing the same thing down in Macon. We're renovating 20 apartments. But I told my property manager down there, Ben, that, hey, at the end of this, if we can refi out or sell this, I'm going to give you a $10,000 bonus for running this project for me. So now I'm one of his favorite clients, right? He's getting fees, he's getting his markup on maintenance, but there's this light at the end of the tunnel that he's going to get paid, and then hopefully help find me another deal. So
Back to the symbiotic relationship between these things, your conversancy, your insight on the investment side. What does it do for the PM company in terms of your ability to have maybe a different quality and caliber of conversation with prospective owners?
Right. As a property manager, you want to be the expert in real estate. And I think residential real estate, single family rentals, fix and flip, that's real estate 101. What we're doing is more commercial transactions, so real estate 301. And it just helps them get comfortable with you in a hurry. And even commercial brokers want to refer you business because they want their deal to close. And if they've got a buyer that comes to them and says, hey, we're bringing money in from San Francisco or DC, they need a property manager, they want to call somebody that knows what they're doing and can talk that language and make them look good. So that's helped out a lot. And also it's led to opportunities where I can invest as a limited partner in their syndication. And this one's top of mind because it just happened today, but I invested as a limited partner in a deal. It was $3.2 million, 24 units in Richmond. And again, I think we won that management account because I knew what I was talking about. I knew what their business plan was. We were going to charge for parking, get it up to market rent, and then increase the NOI. So that's going to drive value. So we did that over 18 months. We've managed it, and I came in for $100,000. So I've got a limited partnership stake. And at first, it was kind of counterintuitive, right? Why am I going to invest in a competing syndicator? Because I want to save that capital for my own deals, right? I'm going to go sponsor a deal. I need a down payment. But I really just wanted to network and learn from these guys. And so I came in, this property, we got it up to market. We started charging for parking, and it just hit the market today for $4.8 million. So if you're a property manager and you hear, man, my 24 unit building is going to be sold, that's a gut punch. I mean, that stinks. That sucks. But I've also got equity in there. So we help them perform on their business plan. When that property sells, maybe we'll keep it. Maybe the buyer will use us because we've proven that we've performed. But I'm going to get a nice, 3x return on my equity that I invested. So that softens the blow a little bit, and that gives us a runway to do more deals. And these guys, they may reinvest their profits back into another deal in Richmond, or who knows. But it was a way that I could help them and learn as well.
Ralph, every trade or craft requires a specific set of specific material hard skills, being a coach, a pilot, a school teacher, a property manager. What is the distinction that you would tease out in between the hard skills required to run and build a successful property management company versus being a successful syndicator?
That's a great question. The skill sets are they're varied, and that's where my partnership with Ali has really been instrumental. Is he's strong on underwriting, figuring out how this property is going to perform, sourcing debt. He understands there's 15 different things you can negotiate with a commercial lender. And then, my skill sets are more in networking and raising capital and handling the operations and hiring great people. So it's varying skills, and I don't have them all, and I don't think anybody does. So you got to find ways to, recognize where you're weak and find somebody that can fill that gap.
What do you have to say about partnerships? Partnerships in real estate are similar, but not quite a parallel of a partnership in a going concern. Nonetheless, there's a large surface area for failure. What's been your experience? What's your advice on who to choose to do a deal with and under what circumstances? Yeah,
there's an old phrase that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I take a lot of heed in that because for me, it's more fun to create these relationships and partnerships. So at each deal, we may bring in 2 or 3 new investors. That's somebody new in my Rolodex. We'll take them out for a closing dinner, say thank you. And it just kind of feeds on itself. So the next time out, maybe there's more people. So you're growing your network. And people may invest in every single deal with you. They may do 1 or 2 and move on, and that's fine. And that's why I like these. These projects are anywhere from a 3 to 7 year hold, and so it's not like you're starting an operating company and, Jordan and Ralph are going to go work together for the next 25 years. It's, hey, we're going to work together for 90 days to get this closed. We'll check in quarterly or annually, let you know how the investment's doing. And if you want to come back again, great. If not, hopefully we've provided a nice return and you've learned something from partnering with us.
Let's pause here to talk a little bit about the PM Syndication Summit. This is an event that you're hosting later in the year, specifically catering to property management professionals that are interested in developing the capabilities and the capacities that we're talking about. Tell me a little bit about the format, the agenda. What are people going to be showing up in Richmond later this year for?
Sure. Thanks for that. So we're hosting the PM Syndication Summit. That'll be a 2.5-day event in Richmond, May 18th, 19th, and 20th. And we've got property managers coming in from around the country to learn how to do this. And there'll be educational formats. We've got other speakers coming in. My partner, Ali, and I will be providing a roadmap of how you can get started and learn the ins and outs of underwriting, how to find a deal, how to convert equity partners, get soft commitments, structure it legally, and go through all those steps. So it'll help people that want to be general partners or syndicators. It'll help property managers that want to be limited partners like I've done and create strategic clients that are going to be buying more and more deals and help them learn the language of commercial real estate. So I'm passionate about it. It kind of came up. There was another real property management franchise last year out in Sioux Falls that hosted about 20 franchisees out for a training session on some large multifamily stuff. And
Was that Express?
It was. Mm-hmm. Yep. So Josh Kattenberg and Merlin Huff did a great job. And I just kind of wanted to return the favor. So I said, guys, if you'll come to Richmond, we'll teach on this stuff. And it was something I thought more people were doing. And as I started talking, it was like I was speaking Chinese. They didn't quite get it. And so I think that's where we want to do is we want to give everybody the secret sauce and let you go home and find deals in your market. And, Ali and I have actually agreed to give away $100,000 of equity. So if you do come, we want you to go home and pitch us on a deal, and we'll come in as your loan sponsor. We'll put up $100,000 and we'll help you knock out that first deal.
So this is going to be low to the ground, nuts and bolts, breaking down deals, walking through specific processes. Are we going to look at some properties?
Yes, absolutely. So we've got a couple projects. One we just closed on. It's in lease up right now. It was a tax credit project. And then another one that's under development. We're redeveloping an old warehouse into 42 apartments. And we'll show you how we met those developers, how we pitched them on adding value. And so as a property manager, it's nice to know that, yes, there's some churn here in the market, but I've got 42 units that are coming online in October, and we'll go out and tour that and learn how we got into that side of the business too.
I'm planning on being there. I'm bringing a number of my staff members, and if you're listening to this right now, come, show up. This could be a disproportionate impact on what you're doing relative to your career. I don't say this very often. Ralph's not paying me anything to say this. I strongly endorse and recommend showing up. I think this is going to be extremely interesting. I think this is one of those things where folks have thought about it. It seems both obvious and in some ways like a giant pain in the ass.
Right.
Because what are we talking about? It's ambiguous. It's both within striking distance and not quite there. So right. to not only have some of the specifics, but maybe the inspiration around accessibility, I think is going to be huge. At the end of the name of the game here is wealth creation. People are in business to make a buck, want to have a good time, want to have meaningful relationships. But let's be honest, we're all commercially minded. If there is non-parity between the opportunity through real estate investment versus running a going concern, if the delta is as big as what we're talking about, this feels like really a non-negotiable opportunity to show up. That's the end of that pitch.
Perfect.
Let's get back to what we were talking about.
Thank you.
So Ralph, you've done this work in this space with REI and with property management. Let's talk about ancillary business units. There's title, mortgage, maintenance company, HOA, short-term, commercial. It just goes on and on and on. Property management is connected to so many different things. Have you entertained or engaged in any of these other ancillary business units? What are your thoughts on the possibilities there?
To answer your question, no, I haven't. I really wanted my side hustle, if you would, to add value and doors to the management business. And that's where real estate investing and syndication stood out above all those others. Those are all great. It's another operating company with fees, but you're not, gaining equity. You don't get all the benefits of real estate ownership. So we do a lot of our maintenance in-house. That's like having another business. But we don't do a ton of brokerage. So all those other title and insurance, those kind of things haven't been on my radar. And I know there's a lot of folks that are making a lot of money doing that, but we just stay in our lanes.
Focus.
That's right.
That's beautiful.
Yep.
Let's talk about the operating company. The basic underpinning of a property management business is in large part its unit economics.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a low revenue per unit, it's just hard to make any money, no matter how great of a job you're doing, how well-intentioned you are. Where is your revenue per unit at, ballpark?
We're over $3,000 a door.
$3,000 per door per year. Mm-hmm. Got it. So as you think about the evolution, where did you start and what helped you get to that number?
I will admit I couldn't tell you where we started because I didn't track it back then. I didn't know enough to know that was important. I was just trying to, like a lot of people, I thought the more doors, the more money, and I was a little bit foolish in that. So it was just kind of a constant race. We did a couple small acquisitions. We bought out some competitors, but I really didn't track it as much as I should have. But right now we're doing a lot of things that you see all the other great property management companies doing. So Second Nature, RVP, all that stuff. And I think that number is a little high because we do a lot of our maintenance in house. So we capture a lot of that as income.
What are the sympathies that your investor status give you relative to fee maxing? Fee maxing has almost been beat to death. It's borderline obnoxious to be talking about in some sense, even though I deeply believe in revenue optimization as the path towards making enough money to provide great service. That said, some of all fees are not created equal.
Right.
What fees have you seen that as an investor you think, ouch, I'm not sure what the value there is?
Yeah, I started out that way. That was my belief, right? I was an investor. I started with my own rental properties. I didn't want to pay for that. And then as I scaled and added staff, it was like, this is ridiculous. I'm, losing money on maintenance and I'm paying people to, fix their properties up. So it was, over time I got more comfortable with it. But, as an investor, our deals, they pay a market rate management fee. They pay the same, markups. And, so as long as you can create the value and hit the returns that you've promised, it's going to be a win-win. So
let's talk about vendor management. What best practices do you employ? How do you manage those relationships? There's so much heartache. Vendors are hard to come by. I don't know what to do. Do I take it in-house to get the control back? How do you get the most out of those relationships?
Yeah, it was a challenge, and it's always a challenge. I think that is one of the headwinds I see in this industry is the lack of skilled trades and the aging, whatever the stat is, the average plumber in America is 53 or don't quote me on that. I'm shooting from the hip here, but that's a problem over time because your property value is based on your net operating income. And if your inputs for labor, materials go up, that's going to squeeze those returns. So I see that as a threat. That's why we've brought more maintenance in-house. We've got 7 trucks on the road in Richmond, Virginia. They're beautiful, branded with RPM and Neighborly. And, that was a way just to get that control back, provide better service to the residents, and mitigate some of that risk of rising costs in the field.
Bryn here from Lead Simple. I love Lead Simple, but that feels like a given. Instead of telling you why I love it, here's Sarah Hatch from Hatch Property Management.
We're very happy, and I recommend so many people to Lead Simple because I'm like, oh my gosh, it changed our world. It totally changed our whole way of managing properties and staying in contact. It's the best business investment I've ever made.
To learn more and connect with one of my teammates, go to leadsimple.com/podcast today.
Tell me more in terms of just like the personal aspect. How personally do you get with the vendors? Does that make a difference? Like the relational side of it, what does that look like for you?
It's starting out like any small business. I liked the talk yesterday at NARPM about phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. Phase 1, I knew every vendor. They had my cell phone number. They would stop by the office to pick up checks, and you're in the middle of a leasing transaction. They're like, "Hey, where's my $80 check for cutting the grass?" On Main Street, and it just got to be too much. So I've kind of removed myself from that. We've got a full-time dedicated maintenance supervisor that all he does is vendor relationships. So when he brings in a new vendor, they do 3 work orders with us. He gets a bonus for bringing them in. So it's a way to just not get complacent and say, "Oh, I've used this plumber forever. I'm going to keep using them." We want to keep them actively looking for new partnerships, and so we don't want to give one vendor 80% of our plumbing business, for example.
What lessons have you had to learn the hard way as it relates to being a manager, leading through other leaders?
Great question. At the University of Richmond, I studied leadership studies. That was a leadership studies major. Yes, that is a thing, the Jepson School of Leadership Studies. And we talked about for 4 years if leaders are born or made. So luckily, I've been comfortable in that role in just about every job I've had. And that's one of my assets, is managing people and creating opportunity and taking care of them. So it is a challenge as the business grows. There's, it used to be 5 employees in one room, and now there's, employees that we've hired that, I've only met once or twice. And so I've had to kind of let go of that a little bit. But I think that's an important part of scaling and growing.
Tell me more. Delegation. It's like easier said than done. Competent people. It's built upon the premise of having competent people to delegate to.
Right.
Right. Let's keep it real. Let's not be delusional. Delegation to incompetent people, it's not a gain. It's not a best practice. Mm-hmm. In terms of the recruiting component, what's worked? Have you brought in external leaders? Have you done homegrown? What have you done to fill out that management team that allows you to execute on the idea of delegation?
Right. It's been, I've been lucky to hire a lot of folks from my Facebook friend list. And, as we've grown, those relationships, I've kind of created opportunities for them to learn not just about real estate investing, but also how to, work within our team and our system at Real Property Management. But for me, it was really just like every business function that I just got so tired of. I couldn't do it again. I was like, I need to hire for that person. So, 2 years in, I said, if I take another maintenance call, I'm going to pull my hair out. So I need a maintenance director. And then I delegated all that. And so for 6 months, I kind of oversaw every work order. And then I got comfortable. I just kind of phased out to where I don't log into Property Meld anymore. Sorry, Ray. But we have a lot of folks that do, and they're in it every day. So it was just kind of the same thing with business development. I said, I can't grow my business as fast as I want if I'm in a kitchen across the island from a, accidental landlord. So I need a BDM. And that was the last business function I let go of. And I think that was a mistake because I just enjoyed it. But that's kind of how I delegated what was my pain point? Who can solve this for me? And then just step out of the way over time.
Ralph, how do you handle the enforcement of your performance standards? How do you police quality? How do you handle terminations when invariably that sort of unpleasant thing does come up?
Yep. So I've got a general manager, Sarah Adams, that kind of handles a lot of the HR stuff for us. So we've got KPIs around leasing and maintenance and reviews, business development. So we do a Monday check-in call on a Zoom, and everybody reports back, how they're doing towards their goals. Are they ahead or behind? We've had to terminate some folks over the years that just weren't a good fit. Never an easy conversation to have, but one you want to do sooner rather than later. And we've got, going back, you mentioned our employee partnership, right? Where I own property with our employees. I've had 3 of those that I invested with an employee and it didn't work out, right? They moved on or got out of the business, and we had structured it in a way where I had the option to buy them out at a nominal fee, or they've got to stay for 5 years for that interest to fully vest. So it was, kind of a tough conversation to have. Hey, I understand you're leaving. You want to get into, real estate sales full time. That's great. I wish you all the best. Your equity, has another 3 years before it vests. So that's going to revert back to the house. So my stake went from 70% to 100%. And, it's nothing against them. It's just if, 5-6 years down the road, I may not want to be in a partnership with you. So we were careful in the way we structured that.
Have you ever had an employee leave and start a competing company?
I have not.
Have you ever had an employee steal from the business?
No, I have not.
True. Let's go ahead and just right here.
You're scaring me now.
What is one of the what's the lowest point for you in this journey of property management and investing professionally? Tell me one tale of something that blew up and cost you something.
I mean, there's always days as an entrepreneur where things just aren't going your way. Phone's not ringing, and tenants are mad at you, owners are mad. You had your maintenance tech painted the house the wrong color, so you're out, $2,000 to repaint it. Things like that. It's just, you look at your profit per door, and then you just blew $2,000 on a paint job. You're like, man, I'm going to manage this for free for the next 5 years to cover this. So things like that get under your skin, and I just, keep a even keel. I'd rather, write the check and just move on. It's something we learned early on is how to compartmentalize, not take things personally. We hammer that down to our team as well. It's easy to feel like a punching bag. But I think that would be the lowest, is just those weeks that every entrepreneur goes through where you're like, man, this just isn't working. So
on the flip side of that, what gives you stamina right now? What's the part of the business that you're currently really loving that's lighting you up and giving you the will to maintain your edge?
Yeah, I think just learning. I mean, I really am passionate about lifelong learning, and each deal I learn something new. And I want to share that. And that's why we're doing this summit is, how can I share it with my team? We've been doing that for 5 years, teaching them how to invest. How can I help other property managers, learn how to syndicate deals and grow their business? So it's, it's both. And I love, helping our clients. But if you're, there's not a ton of value there, right? You've got a high net worth individual. They're going to be wealthy, regardless. You're giving them another investment vehicle. And that's great. You feel good about providing that return. But if I can teach somebody else how to do it and change their life, that's really what I'm passionate about.
When you think about simplicity versus complexity in a deal, simplicity generally is a higher bar than complexity. It requires more forethought to take something hard and reduce it down to a really simple, beautiful, convenient structure that isn't overly simple. What are red flags for you and when you see an unnecessary level of complexity in a deal?
Well, they're all complex. I mean, it's
and it seems like they're getting more complex as the scale is increasing. Right. How do you suss out when this is appropriate, useful complexity when it's just a pain in the neck and surface area for unnecessary problems?
Right. I think that would be one of my faults, is that I have a hard time saying no to stuff. It's like, do you want to develop a ground up 250 unit Class A apartment building? Absolutely. I'm going to jump in and figure that out. And literally, this is a conversation I had last week, and that's way out of my comfort zone. So, I don't know where the breaking point is, but I want to continue to challenge myself and learn that. And there's, a lot of folks out there that are willing to help you. And that's exciting.
Let's talk about some of those vendor components. You talked about spending quite a bit of money on legal. There's financing. For somebody that's wanting to execute on this in their market, how do they go about finding these relationships? How specialized do these relationships need to be? I have an uncle that's attorney. I have a brother-in-law who, sells residential mortgages.
Right.
How do you go about finding the right people to partner on the vendor side specifically?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of start within your network, and then you outgrow those folks or find another specialist they can introduce you to. We had a good closing attorney that did all of our single family stuff. And then we did a larger commercial deal, and the closing was kind of a nightmare. I mean, things didn't quite get done. And we said, listen, we need an attorney that specializes in commercial real estate. And, I said, listen, this was great. It was kind of a shit show, but what can we do differently? And so we just, found a new attorney that dealt with, larger deals, and for higher fees, of course. And then, the same thing on the insurance side. I mean, we shop everything on the the debt side, that I can't stress how important that is. We'll go to the last deal we closed. We went to 11 different debt providers to find the best rate and terms that would fit our business plan. So it's you can't just get roped into one commercial lender because their rates may be good on the first deal, and then the next time out they're not so great. So we really shop that and negotiate aggressively.
What are the margins like? How important is that shopping that you're referencing? Is that just like, hey, the best deal is the best deal, or was the margin tight enough that was fundamentally imperative to get the deal done?
It's fun. It's always important to place the right debt, and it's not necessarily the rate, but what's the prepayment penalty? How long do I have on this? And and it can really handcuff you. We've got sellers in our portfolio now that can't liquidate their asset because they've got $1 million prepayment penalty. And so they thought, well, my property, my 34 units have gone up in value, but no buyer is going to pay that $1 million prepayment. And, you promised that lender a certain return on that loan. You've got 7 years left on that term. So you got to sit tight. So those are things to think about. And people get attracted to those because it may be non-recourse, but what's in the fine print, and that can really hurt you because it's like, hey, this is a great time to sell apartments, but they can't.
Talk to me about timing. What has the current financial economic environment done for your investing? What do you anticipate over the next 24 months? Nobody really knows, but what do you see happening, and how do you think those trends will impact how active you are as an investor?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of cap rate compression in Richmond, right? So prices have gone up. People are paying more for the same NOI. So, that's led me to look at other markets. You're from Texas. I'm sure there's some people from California that are buying real estate here. I'm from Virginia. I like Georgia. So we're looking at that. We're trying to diversify the asset class. We've got a lot of Class A multifamily in Richmond. We're buying some Class C stuff down in Macon. We're buying single family deals. So, I think there's still opportunity out there, even with rising interest rates. You've just got to be a little more selective. And that's why I love to network with property managers, because they find the best deals. And, we've got a great one down in Georgia. It's a little too soon to talk about, but it's an SFR portfolio that came to me just because I was networking with other PMs.
Let's talk about the service that you're rendering to your property management clients. The syndication as a service to them. You could just manage the property, do a good job.
Right.
To what degree have you created an opportunity that otherwise would not have existed for your current clients in terms of inviting and bringing them into deals?
Sure. That's a great question. I've got one that comes to mind. This was a guy that first approached me about a lease-only deal. I heard somebody say, oh, we don't do lease-only. Well, you never know who you're going to meet. But this guy said, hey, I've got this apartment. Can you just lease it out for me? It was in a mixed-use building in downtown Richmond. I said, sure, no problem. We had coffee. And he said, if you see anything in the $4 to $8 million range, let me know, because I'd be interested in buying that. And I said, okay, well, it's a little bit out of my comfort zone at that time. I'd been in property management 3 weeks, but I really knew okay, this guy is onto something. He's going to do bigger things. So how can I help? And he was actually one of the equity guys that I placed into that first syndication. So he's now participated in, I want to say 6 deals with me, has 180 units, just because we had coffee to talk about a lease only. So, he felt confident. We performed on that. We helped him renovate this other one. He's now invested in all these. So that's, could he have placed his money elsewhere? Sure. But, we've created a great relationship. He's a good friend. And, it's a pretty sticky client for property management, right? I don't think he's going to go to one of my competitors just because of that trust level that we have.
Talk to me about the GP-LP relationship and the privileges between the two.
Sure. So a lot of folks go, man, I want to get in. I want to be a co-GP. I want to come in with you on a deal. And that's fine. You got to be careful the way you structure that because that's where everyone thinks the GP or the syndicator is going to get all the fees, right? So I think that's the biggest difference is that. Let me suss it out in an example. So that first deal, I was in for $50,000. I got a brokerage fee on the front end. So, it was 2 points on a $2.8 million transaction, right? So I was able to essentially roll my commission into equity. So I really had no cost basis in that investment, right? So the returns to me are infinite, right? Because I had, money came in, I of course paid taxes on it, but, reinvested it. The LP is bringing after-tax cash and getting, a smaller return, right? So you've got your 8% pref, and then, your IRR over the lifetime hold is usually going to be upper teens. So that's kind of the difference between the two positions. We're doing all the work. We're finding the deal. We're spending 90 days of due diligence. Before we got that under contract, we probably wrote offers on 7 or 8 other buildings. So when I started out, you were talking about fees and how you justify them, or do I discount because I'm an investor? Starting out, I was cautious and, nervous about it. Like, are they going to pay me for this? And over time you go, oh my gosh, I just busted my ass for, 4 months. This last deal, we wrote an offer in March of 21. It took 12 months to close. Like, I can't tell you how many calls and emails we spent during that time. So you got to charge for that. And that's where, as a general partner, we've been really successful and really haven't gotten much pushback because you're just adding value to their life and to their portfolio.
Yeah, that's relatable. I'm doing a very small deal, my first deal right now. And the friend that is facilitating was, the fee structure was really low because he's newer to it as well. And at one point he came back and he asked to raise some of the fees. And I thought about it. And I thought about how much time he had exerted and how much could be left. And I thought, yeah, I think that's worth it. Like, I really want him doing this. I want him feeling good and like maximally invested in performing the act. And come to find out, it's ended up continued to take way more time than we thought. But, at the end of the day, it's
Right.
all working out. It's all worthwhile.
Right. And that's great. And if you respect the expertise and value somebody else brings, and that's what I gave that example of my property manager that's doing the rehab. As a manager, I've never had anybody come to me and say, hey, well, you add $10,000 fee to my management agreement. But I know how much work he was going to put in. I think he underestimated it. So I was like, listen, I'm going to build this in. We're going to give you a bonus when you perform. And it just creates such a much warmer, friendly relationship. Like, hey, I respect you. I know what you're going to do for me. I'm going to pay you for that.
So what about vertical versus horizontal? You could get your rocks off doing bigger and bigger deals within the same asset classes, particularly with multifamily, that will scale pretty aggressively. Or you can go sideways and you can get into some self-storage, some commercial. What are your preferences? What turns you on? Where do you see yourself going?
I think if you go over 100 units, there's so much competition out there. There's a lot of institutional money coming down from the top. I can't remember the stat, but I think it's like 54% of apartment buildings over 100 units are owned by some kind of institutional player. And I don't want to compete with them. So I kind of like these mid-sized deals. They've been really profitable for us. They're too big for a mom and pop investor, right? They're not going to go buy a $3 million building. So I think there's less competition. I do like that space. I love residential. I did get out over my skis on a deal. I found a great off-market opportunity for an industrial building, and this was you can call it a failure, I guess. But we had the property tied up at $10 million 2 years ago, and couldn't raise the capital, couldn't close on it because people were looking at me going, "You're a residential property manager. What do you know about this industrial building?" It was actually a HVAC warehouse that had a great lease on it. And I knew it was going to be a home run. But it just came to me too soon. I think now I could probably pull it off. But so I spent 4 months chasing it and trying to set meetings and just had to get out of the contract right before deposit went hard. And that same building, of course, everybody knows what's happened to industrial since COVID, just sold at $14.5 million. So it stings a little bit, but I like to stay in my lane. So to answer your question, like wider, different asset classes, self-storage, there's a lot of people doing great things in that, but I just want to stick to, SFR portfolios, small multifamily. And if there's a great industrial deal, maybe I'll take a look at it. But, again, you don't know until you try.
What about build to rent?
I would take a look at that. Yes. Yep. I had one of those cross my plate yesterday, a small deal in Richmond. Again, I would only do it with the right partner. I don't have time to go out and learn all the permitting and development aspects of it. But if I had somebody that did, and all they needed was equity or property management, and I could provide that, and they could bring the other 70% of the skill sets, then I would consider it.
The reality is I could go on and on because I find this extremely interesting as a highly related corollary to the bread and butter of property management. But at the end of the day, there's only so much conversation on one podcast. This is part of the reason for people to come to the summit. What's the website people can go to look at and potentially purchase a ticket to the summit?
Sure. It's PMSyndicationSummit.com, PMSyndicationSummit.com. We would love to have you. And Jordan, maybe there's a promo code we can post in the show notes for your listeners. We'd love to give them a discount and come learn the secret sauce in Richmond, Virginia.
We'll leave it there. It was great having you on, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Richmond later this year.
Great. Thanks, Jordan.
We'll leave it there. Jordan here asking you, what do you got? What is a question you want to ask me? Can you stump me? Can you throw me something hard, perplexing, vexing, something you feel tied up in knots with? Throw it at me. I'll do my best to try and answer that question, to dissect it, to parse out the nuance, and maybe help you get a bit more clarity. I'm looking for questions as the basis for creating content, and you're looking for answers as the basis for clarity. And wouldn't it be perfect if those two things matched up? Drop a comment, send me an email, jordan@leadsimple.com. Let's stay in the conversation. Peace.